This is how to make work so addictive you become immune to distraction. In this video, I'm going to share with you the secrets to become addicted to working on your business, working on your craft, and outperforming everyone else. Just imagine what your life would feel like if you could work for 12 to 14 hours every single day, extremely focused, no distractions, and just so productive and satisfied and happy all the way through, so that when the day finishes, you're not thinking I could have done more. Well, this is and has been my life for the past year, and here we have the silver play button which came in the email yesterday. And of all, this is just a symbol of all the hard work, all the dedication, all the focus and the mastery and the discipline that has been required to, to get to this level. So I'm super happy. Thank you guys for 100K. This is absolutely amazing. And above all, it's just discipline that has allowed me to get to these levels, to hit 100K on YouTube, to build a business that allows me to live my dream life, to having an amazing relationship, to being in decent shape. And essentially, discipline is the foundation to everything. Part number 1, outcome and purpose driven. You see, people don't quit because it's hard. They quit because it starts to feel pointless. It starts to feel like their direct actions don't equal a direct result. It is all about uncertainty. When going through YouTube, when pushing through the hard times, like there were so many times where I felt like I could quit, right? And I could have easily said that, I'm gonna quit because this is not for me, or it just doesn't feel right. We're at 106K right now, and at any point in the journey, I could have just said this isn't for me. And I could have went and tried something else. And that's why you need to have this outcome and purpose driven to make work so addictive that you just stick through it every single day. You're immune to distraction. You're so productive. That mindset that allowed me to continue, that is just being outcome and purpose driven. You see, effort without visible direction is just mental resistance. What we need right now is to create clear outcomes. You need to identify your goal, identify everything about the life you want to live. That is going to make the process of work easier, because you can't work if you don't have a clear outcome in mind. Because chances are you're just chasing vague goals, right? You tell yourself, I want to work on my business. What does that even mean? Like, what does it mean to work on your business? That's just like such a vague description that like your brain can't process it. Your brain doesn't even know what that means, so it's not going to start. So when you get to sitting at your desk, you're going to feel all this resistance. You're going to feel all these distractions just come creeping in, and it's going to be so hard to focus. Now, if you want to scale your business, you're going to need to do the work required, and that is going to need tremendous focus. So instead of just chasing these vague deadlines, you want to make it as specific as possible. So instead of, work on your business, like what does that even mean? Instead, you're going to want to shift to something like book 3 qualified leads today, 3 qualified calls. And you need tangibles attached to the outcomes you want to achieve. This is the only way to make the process of work actually enjoyable. Because, when you have specific targets, when you have specific tangible outcomes, it turns your work into a mission. And all of a sudden, you're sitting down and you're like, I have to do this. I'm going to finish it. And then I'm going to move on to the next thing. And I just have this sequential focus. I'm not easily distracted. And a big thing is you need to share your wins. You need small visible wins with your work that are just going to give you that dopamine so you can continue. And this is what I do all the time with members inside Discipline OS and also the people who work with me one-on-one. For example, you need these wins, right? Money is a great motivator. It's a very tangible outcome. You can feel it. You can attach it to like living a better life. So you can use that. You can use money as a motivator to get the work done, to show up every single day, to work on the business, to start the business if you haven't already, to make money online, and to just build the life that you don't need to escape from. Like, this is the thing that goes through my head. You live once, just one time on this planet Earth. So why not live a life that is so amazing, so fun, so fulfilling that you don't need to escape, you don't need to scroll for hours, you don't need to distract yourself and procrastinate because your life is a movie. You don't need to play video games because your life is the video game. That is the goal we want to achieve, and the only way to get there is through deep work. Deep and focused work with intention, with the right systems. And to get there, you are going to need discipline, right? You need discipline to consistently be able to show up and do the work required. And then doing that work consistently is going to get you the result. Whether that's a financial result, a physical result, a mental or an emotional result. So if you watch videos like these, it means that you are way more driven than the average person. You have this hunger, this drive to achieve and build success. And that's why you're in the right place. Subscribe and let's go to part number 2. Stake-driven obsession. You see, humans respond to risk, not to comfort. So for a second here, just imagine a burning building. Think about how fast away from the burning building you would run. And also think about, not seeing a loved one for years and then meeting them in the airport. You would run towards them so quickly. But even then, you would still run away faster away from the burning building than towards the loved one. So in that sense, just think about how powerful of a motivating force fearing some certain outcome is. If there is a downside, then you create urgency. And if there's urgency, then there's action. Now, the work you need to put in to build better habits, beat procrastination, make more money, and get to where you want to be and build that success, that work is going to be hard. There are going to be days where you really don't feel like doing the work. You really don't feel like showing up. But that is where you need to fabricate urgency, because if you don't have a downside, right, you don't have urgency. If there is no like negative thing that could happen if you don't do the work, it's like you could be lazy, you could procrastinate, and there is no feedback. right? The feedback is delayed. If you don't work today, nothing is going to happen. You're still going to live your life the same way. And your brain sees that and it starts to think to itself, that must mean that being lazy and not working and being distracted is a good thing. Fear is a stronger motivator than pleasure. That is why having something like an anti-vision, where you identify everything about the life you don't want to live, is a great motivator. Because automatically, by running away from the outcome you don't want, you run towards the outcome that you do want. So it's really about just creating and manufacturing the environment in which you're able to be obsessed. Obsession comes from two things: uncertainty and reward. Once you start seeing results, you become obsessed. And at the same time, that level of challenge, that level of difficulty, that it's not too easy, but it's also not too difficult, that's where you start to really enjoy the process. And that's also where flow state comes in. And the main thing here is when there are stakes involved, when something is on the line, your focus sharpens, you all of a sudden enter a new flow state, and you're just focused and you don't waste time. So if you have a deadline, that's the reason why you push off all of the studying that you have to do right before the last day of the exam. Or that's the reason why you don't do the work that you have to do until you really have to do it. Now, the problem with that is it creates a negative feedback loop. So what we're going to want to do instead is create deadlines, right? Instead of, I'll do it later or I'll do it when I have to do it, you need deadlines to ensure that there is pressure. And you need to create a circumstance and just imagine yourself. There's two versions of you 6 months from now. One version of you was lazy, procrastinated, wasted time, didn't do the deep work that they had to do. And as a result, they're exactly where they are 6 months from now. The second version of you, they actually showed up, they put in the work, they were focused, and they were disciplined. And that's why they're exactly where they want to be 6 months from now. Think about which version do you want to be and like how painful it is going to be to look back 6 months from now and realize that really nothing changed. Your habits are still the same, you're not making the money that you know you deserve, your physique is not where you want it to be, and you just don't feel good about your life. And that is where performance-based outcomes versus fixed routines comes in. You see, performance-based outcomes, you just want to think of this like, a salesperson who is only paid once they make a sale, right? They're paid based on commission. Now compare this to a normal 9-to-5 employee who has a fixed salary. Think about who is going to work harder. Of course, it's a salesperson because they're not capped by their income. And money is the greatest motivator, right? So the salesperson, they can work harder and harder and harder, and the harder they work, the more they get rewarded for it. But on the other hand, the employee, they can work and work and work, and nothing is really going to change because their salary can only get maybe a 5% promotion per year. So performance-based outcomes drive the most action, they drive the most mental change, which is going to allow you to do the work required. You see, you need stakes in your life, and the thing is, and most people just avoid stakes in their life because stakes equals, possible failure. And the human mind hates to fail. The human mind really doesn't like losing. And this is also why most people get to a certain point with their business and they just can't scale any further. They feel like almost they're stuck with their income level. They're stuck with the amount of clients they can get, and they're just stuck with the same results. No matter how hard they work, they have a self-imposed ceiling. This is also why people get their physique to a certain level, but after that level, they just can't get better and they have that plateau. And that's why people stop pushing, because they are afraid. They think, what if, what is going to happen if this happens? And that is not a good place to be. So I'm going to teach you in part 3 how to escape the plateau so you can continue seeing progress. If you like my videos, then subscribe to the channel. Part number 3, focus follows consequences. The number one thing to understand is that you are way more likely to be focused on something that is enjoyable to you. Like, you could focus on video games for 9 hours. You could easily play 10 hours of video games a day. And there was a study that found that even people with ADHD, they couldn't focus on the normal tasks, but when it came to something like video games, they were able to focus way longer than most people. I'm not saying video games are good, but what I am saying is that this focus principle is the same. Essentially, ask yourself, how do you make work fun? And when it becomes fun, your brain automatically makes it so much easier to focus. There's no resistance, there's less friction, and you don't have to procrastinate. So ask yourself this question: how do I make work fun? Because if work is not fun, if work is super painful and just doesn't feel good, then it's just a matter of time before you procrastinate, before you waste your time, before 6 months go by and you just did 1 month of work. So your brain always asks this question: does this matter? Your brain is calculating all the time, does this matter? And if it thinks yes, then you give something your full attention. If it thinks no, then you're easily distracted. And this all happens subconsciously within seconds without even realizing it. So consequences are everything. Procrastination is the absence of consequence, right? The thing is, most work has no immediate consequence. If you don't do the work today, nothing is going to happen. Your life is the same. You're going to wake up the same. You're going to eat the same food. You're going to enjoy your life in the same way. And because of that, your brain starts to think that if I skip work or if I'm not really productive, nothing bad is going to happen, which means it's good. If you underperform in your work or you even skip work entirely, your brain is just thinking like, this is fine, this is okay, and it does it again and again and again. You see, your brain has to be trained on what behaviors are good and what behaviors are bad. So you need to reward yourself for good habits, for good things, and you definitely shouldn't reward yourself if you didn't do anything good, you didn't do the good habits, or you did a bad habit. The average dopamine baseline in 2026 is so high, meaning it's almost 3 times or 4 times harder to do anything. And that is because of distractions, that is because of social media, technology, just like access to information, your phone, and also just rewards. You know, rewards, instant gratification is everywhere. You just reward yourself for rewarding yourself without any effort. And then your brain learns, okay, the default is reward. The default is pleasure. The default is entertainment. The default is not working, procrastinating. Chances are your mind is wired like that, which makes it harder to work, which makes it harder to put in those hours of deep work that are going to get you the success. Because if you dial the inputs, you're going to get the outputs. You see, instant feedback loops actually create addiction. When you do something and it's instantly satisfying, your brain is like, wow, I need this again and again and again. But when you do something like delayed gratification, like working on a project, you don't see results immediately. And that's why games are addictive. That's why social media is so stimulating. And that's why work is a lot of the times hard to do. So let's talk about feedback for a second. If you touch a hot stove, immediately you're going to pull your hand back and you're going to feel that instantly. Within milliseconds, you felt that response. And that is why you're going to be extra careful the next time you put your hand near a stove. You see, if the negative feedback is immediate, which means that as soon as you do something, there's instant negative feedback, then you're never going to do that thing again, or you're way less likely to do it. If you do something and then there's instant positive feedback, meaning that something feels good right now, or like you're rewarded right now for the thing that you just did, then your brain is more likely to pursue that again and again, which means that it's going to be easier to do that thing. Now, with your work, you need to stop thinking about the effort required. You need to stop worrying about how much time and effort and energy it's going to take, and you need to instead shift the focus to the rewards at the end. Just think about the dream life, think about the success, think about the money, think about the riches, the abundance, and everything you want to achieve, and just connect it to the work. So that way, when you're working, you're not working and thinking like, oh, I have to do this, I have to do this. You're just thinking, I'm working for my future. I'm working to build success. And that is going to motivate you so much. You see, being lazy and procrastinating is just the habit of always thinking about the effort required to do something instead of thinking about the reward that comes afterwards. So right now in your life, identify where your consequences are. Chances are you reward yourself for everything that is bad for you, all the bad habits, all the procrastination, and you don't reward yourself enough for good work, productive work, and focus. And because of that, your brain just has priorities attached to the wrong things. And that's what makes it hard to work. That's what makes it hard to focus, because your dopamine baseline is so high that anything below that just feels hard. So to make deep work so fun, you're gonna have to lower your dopamine baseline. If you lower your dopamine baseline, which means destimulating your brain, work becomes easier. Reading, journaling, all the habits you have to do just become way easier. Now the question is, how do you do that? You do that by sitting by yourself for 15 minutes. Before a big work task, you just want to sit by yourself, do nothing, right? For 15 to 20 minutes, just sit down and do nothing. Just think, look at the wall, do whatever you want, but just do nothing. No phone, no entertainment, no music, no screens, literally like not even doing or writing anything. What this is going to do is, by the time you get to work, your brain is comparing the work that you're about to do with what you last did. And if you think about it, it makes sense. If your brain was just here, then deep work is over here and it's going to feel fun. But if you scroll TikTok and scroll Instagram, for example, and then you go to deep work, it's going to feel so hard because your brain is just comparing what you did before to what you're going to do next. So if what you did before is way more fun than deep work, then you're not going to do any deep work. It's going to be so hard. So intentionally do things that are boring. Master boredom. Read a book, journal, meditate, go for a walk. Anything real dopamine, especially something like just doing nothing, is going to lower your dopamine baseline. So when you get to do the deep work, it's going to feel like everything clicks faster. You're going to be more focused, more intentional, and you're just going to feel like it's so much easier to focus without distractions and get the work done so you can scale your business, scale your income, reach success. Distractions and focus cannot coexist. So to have one, you must eliminate the other. To have focus, you must eliminate all distractions, which means getting rid of everything in your environment, your phone, extra tabs, notifications, anything that could distract you, and putting it aside. Because as long as you have any distractions in your life, in your environment, when you're doing deep work, there is gonna come like a notification, a thought that in your mind that you have to check something, and then you just switch tabs, you get sidetracked, you hop from one task to the other, and you just context switch. So to master focus, you need to eliminate all distractions. Because if you have distractions, then of course you're gonna get distracted. But the people who operate at a high level, they don't have that problem because they put themselves in environments where every single action has weight. Now, if you're fed up with procrastinating, with wasting time, and you wanna finally build discipline to make more money, to scale your business, your income, master your craft, then you are going to need hyper levels of focus and discipline. So book a call with my team, first link below, and we'll see how we can get you set up and started. Now remember, a bad workout always beats a skipped one. Take care, and you got this.